Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor, I'm the man on the Silver Mountain, and welcome back. Now, last week, you guys may or may not have seen the video on gun control that I did, where I went through a fair number of the statistics based around it and some other stuff, and then the comments underneath the video kind of blew up with me and Hannah and Holly, who's been posting in the comments more recently, ended up kind of in a back and forth with two individuals who very much supported the Second Amendment and some of the other stuff that's going on. They were very opposed to any kind of gun control, with some rather interesting claims that I kind of picked apart in the comments with them afterwards, and I very much appreciate them for actually coming and joining the conversation on that video. So thanks to those two. Even if we ended up disagreeing and moving away after that, such is the way of things. As long as we actually have the discourse, we get the information out there, we have that interesting kind of back and forth. That's the important thing. And then people observing, us personally, we can each take away something from it individually. But one thing that stood out from that discussion was the idea of culture. And I've talked about culture before and kind of what it is, and how there's a bit of a misconception in regards to what it is, how mutable it is, and all that kind of thing. And so when it comes to culture as just a brief definition, it's the ideas, customs, and social behaviour of particular people or society or group or blah blah blah. And the thing is, for the most part, the way that humans organise ourselves in hierarchies, as is something that has been discussed by Professor Jordan Peterson in some of his videos, as well as rather interestingly in the now infamous Channel 4 interview with Kathy Newman. There's not an awful lot of difference between these various hierarchies, these various structures, these organisational systems that we call culture, that we put ourselves together in. And when I was doing both my some of the various management training that I did in the past, as well as when I was doing my coaching qualifications, culture was something that was brought up again, because obviously if you're a corporate coach like myself, to one extent or another, then you're going to be going in, you're going to be having to tackle changes in corporate structures and in that corporate culture. And one of the things that was put forward was a 10-part kind of 10 principles that stand out for getting your kind of organization to move, to shift, to change. And one of the things that first, before I get into those 10 points, that always stood out to me was that culture is always generated from the people at the top. You look at religion, it's not the people at the bottom that are making the calls, it's the priests at the top. And then once they throw the information down on the people below them in the hierarchy, then that information gets swelled around, and you have some people that are big promoters, some people that are just accepting of it, some people that are detractors, but they still have to operate within the system because everyone else is. Then you look at political systems. Over the last kind of few decades, you saw a mismatch with George W. Bush in the United States, where the culture that he wanted to bring was very flat and plain, and that wasn't necessarily what lots of people were looking for. His was very by the numbers, follow along with certain things, don't necessarily think about it, just act, gain support and act. And that wasn't something that necessarily resonated with a lot of people in the United States. There was that mismatch there. Then with Obama coming in, though, he was quite good at handling culture and attempting to shift and work with the cultures in and around his government. And as a result, you did see the emboldening of various groups, especially fringe groups, fringe activist groups on the left, taking his success and molding it, shifting it, changing it to their own. In which case, that was one smaller culture feeding off a much larger culture, because the larger culture had been successful, had been well managed, and then the lesser culture was able to draw from that. We've seen exactly the same with Donald Trump coming in, where I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that Donald Trump has the presence of mind to effectively manage culture, but the people around him do. One of the most prominent ones is General Kelly, as his chief of staff at the moment, seems very aware of handling the culture and the environment around the President Trump's government. And as a result, with those people being able to do the same, we've seen the emboldening of fringe groups on the right as well, where the alt-right has now become this thing that has been better realised, is discussed more, where you have had even further right groups than the alt-right making a big noise because now they feel emboldened to do so, feeding from one large culture into a smaller culture, or a subset of that culture. And so as a result, I want to go through these, and these kind of follow an order. And the order that these kind of principles follow along in is just one way. The thing that I'm using for reference at the moment is something is a 10 business strategy principles for culture, which is from the Katzenbach Center. Just because this has everything that I had in my notes, but in a nice little infographic. Unfortunately, it's something that I haven't been able to copy off the page to actually show you guys, so such is the way of things. But anyway, the first one is work with and within your current cultural situations. Now, this is something that, again, I want to go back to the gun control situation that we were talking about in last week's video, most prominently the shooting in Portland, Florida, that spurred all this most recent round of discussion on this topic. And I'm not getting into the gun control thing. I'm just saying that we have already seen elements of this, shifts of this, in this current situation. So I'm going to be holding them up as an example. The discussion on gun control was something that has already been talked about, can continue to be talked about on that video. Not something I'm going into here, just using it as an example. But with the first one, with working with and within your current cultural situations, then that's the kids protesting, talking to media, going and kind of petitioning and protesting their various members of Congress and Senate and whoever else that they can get in touch with to talk to about this stuff. Going and actually speaking to President Trump directly, even though his answers were somewhat unsatisfactory to them, they worked within that system. The next is that they started to change behaviours, and mindsets will follow. Because obviously, if we start doing something enough, then, hey ho, having that kind of fake it till you make it thing happen, it does happen. If you smile more, you are going to be happy more. Your mindset's going to change. It's that kind of constant feedback loop. We talked about it a little bit in regards to embodied cognition before. So if you start changing behaviours, the mindsets will follow. That's number 2. Number 3 is only focus on a couple of behaviours. Why? Well, simple, because people get overloaded. If you start asking questions of people, question after question after question after question, they're not going to be able to answer all of them. If you ask them one question and give them the space to answer it, then you're going to get a better answer. Same goes with behaviours. If you give people 2 behaviours that they need to work with and change and kind of redevelop, then they're going to have an easier time of it. It's going to be more successful. So in this case, what is being asked for is more paperwork and extra checks. Those are 2 things, one for the authority, one for the public, and those behaviours aren't that difficult to really follow up on. Yeah, they cascade down into different things for different agencies, especially on the more checks side of things. But those are the things that are being talked about, especially at the moment. And those aren't big things to be kind of tackled with. The next thing is deploy authentic informal leaders. And now this is where we look at the kids again. The kids, their parents, stuff like that, where they are being informal. They are being themselves. They're speaking of their own experiences. They are dealing with these things directly as people, as individuals, not as representatives of institutions or people that are granted power. They are simply a group of individuals, or in certain instances, specific individuals who have stood up to make the points, put the points across, make the changes so that they can see what they want to see. And so that they can do it in one way or another on behalf of many other people as well. And so those authentic informal leaders, they're going to be practicing what they preach. They're going to be showing the way. Excuse me. They're going to be showing the way to achieve these goals, to exemplify the changes in behaviour that you want to see in other people. Then number 5 is your formal leaders need to do the same. One of the things that a good leader does, not a manager, a leader does, is stand up and lead by example. Something that we don't see in our politicians an awful lot, which is one of the reasons why we get so pissed off with our politicians and so disenfranchised with politics. But it's a case of having those formal leaders stand up and help. And now this is where there's been an awful lot of backlash around some of the comments that Trump made in regards to this situation, or in regards to some of the other situations that have kind of cascaded out of it, whilst others that have actually stepped forward and tried to make a very significant point, work with the students, discuss with the students, discuss with other people at large, take into account the various different specifics, the numbers, all of those things. Those people that have actually started to take action, even if it's action that in the end doesn't necessarily amount to much, those are people that are getting praised, respected, developed now. And then as a result of that, you've got the people who are kind of sat on the fence, or maybe people who are more negative towards the changes being suggested. You've got that vicarious reinforcement. You've got the people who are authentic informal leaders who are those amongst the community who are working with it. They are the people who are being praised and developed and doing well as a result of them following this pattern. Encourages them to follow the pattern too. When they then see a leader, an authority figure that they may very well buy into, then guess what? You've now got the overall shift that you want. And those 2 points about leadership can go either way. For instance, when I was doing cascade training in a previous job where I was one of the managers that was specifically trained and then I had to bring it in afterwards, I was the formal leader that came in and then had to lead by example to train the next group of people below me, who then helped me cascade it back out to the rest of the team. So that was the formal leader leading by example first, followed by the informal leaders, then cascading it to everyone else and supporting that. The next thing though, point 6, is that just changing the behaviours by itself doesn't actually do anything. Those checks could continue to be carried out. The extra paperwork could be done, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the objective is going to be achieved, because people aren't paying attention to the objective if they're only paying attention to the behaviours. In which case, part 6, once you've got people involved in the behaviours, that beginning practice, that new habit forming behaviour, you need to link that to what your objectives are. In business, it would be linking it to your business objectives. Right, so if we get this new customer service thing in, then that means that our mystery shopper scores are going to go up. It means that our customer, our kind of return footfall is going to increase. Our reviews from customers are going to improve. Our customers are potentially going to be in a better mood. They're going to buy more. They're going to come here more often and potentially come here for specific promotions. In which case, then that earns us more money to the team. That might mean that they get their bonuses more regularly if they hit their targets on those things. You can link those couple of small behaviours. Always upsell at the till. Always ask if someone needs a chocolate bar, some gum, a newspaper, whatever. Always ask that at the till. Why? Because then, even if they say no, you've done your part, and if they say yes because they've not considered it otherwise, then guess what? You've just increased the amount of money you're taking. You've just potentially increased the sales target that you needed to hit for your bonus. You've got all of those things kind of doing that. At which point, then, you have to give it a little bit of time, but not too much time, because the next point is you need to demonstrate the impacts quickly. So with a business, again, it's kind of easy. You can take the last month's figures and the fact that everyone got their bonus, and you can stick it up on a notice board, as much as notice boards are potentially very good places to hide various things on. You can take those things up and throw them into the kind of public eye, or either amongst your people or amongst others that it's pertinent to, and you can see the difference, and then that enthuses people. Oh, look, we started doing this stuff. They explained how it linked all together. We had our kind of informal leaders, the influences in our kind of community, in our culture, and we had our actual formal leaders all working on this stuff, all on just a couple of things, and it's had this huge impact, and we're getting paid more, and we're seeing more of the things we want. At the moment, we're in the period in regards to the gun control issue in the States at the moment, and the gun control discussion in the States at the moment, that the leadership has only just started being involved. So what they would need to do next is not just link the behaviours that they want to see to the objectives, stuff that has been done in the past but hasn't been done in a particularly concrete fashion so far, considering people have been getting sidetracked on accusing children of being crisis actors, or suggesting that news outlets have been lying when they have demonstrably not been doing so. And as a result, they've not been able to solidly link the behaviours that they want to see and the behaviours that they want to get going to the overall objectives, which need to be quantified. And then also, because those behaviours are only just starting, if they really get off the ground at all, considering the attitudes in the United States, then it's only after that that you're going to see enough evidence to then go, look, there's the impact. The next thing that is kind of stands out, and this is one that the way it's been put here is a little kind of off, because here they go, use cross-organizational methods to go viral, and yeah, that's all very well and good, but it's more about reinforcement. It's more about raising the points again, which, yes, go viral, have it spread and all the rest of it, sure, but after that demonstration of the impact that you can make and how quickly you can make the impact, then in this case it's not so much going viral, because potentially you're only looking to influence one specific culture in business again, for instance. But when it comes to this kind of thing, you're going to look towards developing either a means of tracking it, a means of continually celebrating it, showing it off more, getting the people that have been working for you, those informal leaders or the team below them, the people below them, to buy into it, so that then they are expressing it themselves, they are promoting the system themselves, they are promoting the change themselves, instead of it purely being the people at the top starting it and then it working down. You want people from the bottom to start throwing that echo around, yeah, which is something that we mentioned earlier. You want that continual kind of revolution of this these set of ideas, these patterns of behavior, the evidence that you've thrown out there that demonstrates impact. You want all of that kind of rolling around. The next thing that's after that, though, is point 9, which is obviously you're going to have certain programs within your organization, be it a business, be it a government, be it whatever, and those programs, those systems are going to probably be for things like electing new leaders, handling new situations, ensuring the best customer service, whatever. In which case, though, those things are not going to change until there has been enough impact and enough buy-in for it to apply to everybody. And so the second to last point is making sure that all those old programs, those old systems, those old things that function to either raise people up or move people along, all tie in to whatever change you've just made. This is the kind of, you've already evaluated what you've done, you've already proved the impact, you've already got the people on your side. Now is the time to sit down and make sure that all prior stuff is getting organised and made functional. This, I would argue, after you have got the beginnings of changes, after you have got the various leadership involved, after you've linked the behaviours to the objectives, demonstrated the impact of these things within your specific situation, and then gained mass appreciation. This point here in the gun control example would be where legislation actually gets put through, amendments to the Second Amendment, additional bits of legislation per state depending on the various focuses and what's available in each place. That would all come in this reshuffle period at point 9. This is the time when it needs to be done, because this is the thing, you already have some checks, in which case doing a few more checks would make more sense. You already have some paperwork. Adding more paperwork to it and demonstrating the impact of those two things wouldn't necessarily require big legislational change. You know, as per certain companies, I think it's Dick's Hardware or something like that in the States, put out a statement actually pointing out that they are going to be removing certain products from their stores because of this whole thing, and suggesting prompt action by their leadership to take action on these things to prevent children from getting killed more. You know, that can all be done without even touching legislation, without even touching anything else. And so as a result, the legislative, the kind of paperwork side and the concrete side of it all has to come in this point 9, where you're using what the previous 8 kind of principles, 8 points have already presented to you, that then you are able to rework and refocus on all of the stuff that has gone before, so that you can bring it all up to date. You know, this is the thing that doesn't happen enough. Reviews of old legislation, old policy. You know, this is how loopholes get formed. This is how systems end up being no longer fit for purpose. And so it becomes important. And then the last point is that you just need to then pay attention. You need to pay attention to the change that you made and the situations that spin out from it, and where other changes might need to be. You know, it's just a case of monitoring, of managing, of leading your people, instead of just letting it freewheel, going, oh, well, we've done everything we can. It's a case of, no, you need to be attentive, you need to pay attention, you need to get on with it, you need to work with your people. And if another change is required, then great. From point 10 here, where you've been paying attention and managing it and checking in over time, if another change needs to be made, go back to point 1. Work within the current situation to kind of develop the new one. Get the people's behaviours to change and the mindsets follow. Go and tackle only a couple of behaviours so that it's easy. Get your leadership involved, be it a formal leader first or an informal leader first. One way or the other, the cascade will still happen. Linking it all up, demonstrating the impact, getting the kind of, not echo chamber, but the kind of congregation to work together on it, and then realigning afterwards. And then kind of check in, monitor, rinse, repeat. Simple, easy, and it works for every culture. It can work in a club, it can work within a business, it can work in government. We've seen it work in government, where you've had various, I don't know, Iceland, for instance, where they had their big issues around their government, and then they had the whole thing shut down and their system rework itself and shift around a lot so that the country was still functional, but you know, their government to a degree was minimalized for a while. And it's a case of, yeah, that's still all there, but how did it start? Well, it started with the current system kind of being worked within and grinding to a halt, and then they started changing their behaviors because they had to. which then brought more mindsets on board. They only changed a select few things overall, but then the leaders got behind it. It made the impact. It got them where they wanted to go, and the people there saw some changes that they wanted to see. You know, you've obviously never going to get a perfect situation, and it's daft to expect one. But this 10-point pattern allows most cultures, as said, they are basically indistinguishable regardless of where they come from or what environment they're in. They all follow this similar structure. And so as a result, you can tackle this and make it work in this way. So I hope that this has been interesting, and maybe even help some of you who are working in businesses or looking for these other things. So, you know, I'd love to hear your thoughts on where there's been a change in the culture of your place of work or school or whatever else, and it's been a case of how has that been managed? How hasn't it been managed? In fact, in regards to school, the change in culture has often led to activism and upset and silly things because these patterns aren't being followed, they're not being adhered to, they're not being worked around. You know, when you've got activism that starts off by completely ignoring the current cultural system, fighting it straight away, then guess what? Change isn't going to happen because the next few steps all relate back to that groundwork being laid in the current system. You know, there's always going to be that backlash because you've not got on board with the way that the people and hierarchies and systems operate to begin with. But anyway, guys, you know, I'd love to hear your experiences, your thoughts, and otherwise I hope you found this useful and interesting, both for the definition of culture and the way that it all works, but also on this 10-part pattern that you can actually put into practice to make changes, hopefully for the better. But anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the video later. Take care. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, then please drop us a like, share this video, and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the video tomorrow. Take care.